Thank you for joining the webinar, 4 ways to connect estimates to the field for higher profitability. So let's get going on today's webinar. First of all, I want to thank everyone for taking the time to be with us here today. And we are going to have a look at how we can connect estimates with the field to drive that higher profitability. During the webinar, we will have a look at how I've set up an estimate and convey my intention to the field, where they can then utilize that information to plan appropriately and review as well to ensure they're staying on track throughout the construction process. Before we get going on that end of things, a couple introductions here first. My name is Scott Adams. I'm a solutions engineer here with B2W. I've been with the company for a couple of years now. I was a product trainer before that. And prior to joining B2W, I was actually a client who deployed the full suite of software across a number of businesses in the heavy civil industry up in Canada. Along with me today is Tom Willey, Senior Solutions Engineer with B2W. Tom has been with the company for 15 plus years now. Started out heading up the implementations group and then over on the training group as well before landing in the Senior Solutions Engineer role. Where he now does the same thing along my lines of showing demonstrations of the product to potential clients. Tom will be more in the background today, managing the questions area as we walk through the webinar. And keep in mind, we are going to do our best to answer all the questions for you, but some of those questions that come in may be more specific to individual business setup, as maybe you're using the software or looking to use the software. And in those cases, we may take them offline and respond to you directly afterwards. Now, with that in mind, as you see on the screen here, we have an agenda for the webinar today. To start with, we're going to look at estimate and again review how I set up a job to track in the field and discuss a couple of ways and look at a couple of ways we can get that information over to our operational suite so that the field can pick it up from there. After that, we will jump over to the operational side of things and look at that job the way it's been set up and the information we did push across. And at that time, we'll also look at how we can create a field log and report back from our work being done in the field to the job. And at this point as well, we'll also see how we're not able to only easily populate a field log, but the flexibility we have of information on there. And how that is sent back to the office for review purposes. After we fill out the field log, we'll look at some review information on the mobile side of things as well as back in the job itself. And this information typically gives us a perspective of what's going on a day-to-day basis as we work through the construction. And as well, it will drive some discussions if we need to have any adjustments made on that job based on those the information we're reporting back. And ensure we either stay on track or get back on track productivity-wise as well as profitability-wise. And then finally, we'll come back and complete the loop and look at how we can look at the information from the estimate side of things as it's been reported in our operational database to make more informed and better decisions on future bids with comparable scopes of work going forward. At the end of the webinar, we will also have a Q&A session if there's anything that pops up during that time and want to play it to the end. But other than that, before we actually do get jumping on the demo side, we may have some people that don't use any of our products currently. So I just want to provide a little bit of background on the B2W side of things and their one platform for a minute. As you can see here, our focus at B2W is to help companies drive profitability in the heavy construction industry. And we look to do this through our unified estimating and operations platform. On this platform, collaboration is key, and the flow of information across the different elements helps us not only work smarter and more efficiently, but also means the way we transfer the data from one element to the next minimizes any errors and requires less assumptions to be made in the field. In the end and overall, deploying an easy-to-use software and having easy, reviewable data along the way and across the elements is something that we find and typically cannot be done in other formats of estimating and field tracking, like pen and paper or spreadsheets that are currently used. So what is the one platform that I'm talking about? On the screen here now, you do see the elements associated with that one platform. Right at the top of the circle there is B2W Estimate. That's our tool that makes it easier and more efficient for us to get bids out the door at tighter margins. Down clockwise from B2W Estimate is Schedule, Track, and Maintain. These are all three elements housed within our operational suite. And B2W Schedule is where we can manage our resources and assignments in the field across our active jobs, dispatch them accordingly. B2W Track is our production analysis and tracking tool, where we get that real-time data back from the field to be able to view and have discussions on as soon as it's been submitted. B2W Maintain is our asset and fleet management tool, which helps us keep our equipment up and running, assisting in the productivity and profitability on our jobs on a day-to-day basis. And B2W Inform, our digital capture and analysis tool, which essentially allows us to take any paper process we have in the field, put it into a digital format, and then review that information and have further discussions about what's going on daily in our business. Now, overall, while this is a one platform, you don't have to deploy all these elements at one time. And typically, where a lot of the contractors start is a combination of what we're going to look at here today with B2W Estimate and B2W Track. But also keep in mind, any one of these pieces could stand alone for use within your business process, or as you continue to evolve in using the software, be added on down the road through the technology we use on sharing one database. Now, while that is the B2W1 platform, our main goal here today is to look at 4 ways we can connect estimates to the field for higher profitability. And what I'm going to do right now is leave the world of PowerPoint and jump over into the actual software and have a look at how first I've set up a bid with an estimate and how we can take that information and connect it to the field. So on our screen here now, you're going to see my homepage for the B2W Estimate. And essentially, this is the starting point of our process here today. Within Estimate, for those of you that may use it currently, or if not, this is where we can house various pieces of information you may already have from a costing perspective, as well as information associated with our accounting systems that we're using. Right? So job cost IDs, phase codes, whatever we want to call them to get information out of Estimate to create a budget on the accounting side of things. We can house that information and the setup and use of the software on a day-to-day basis. Also, what we're going to look at here is that while that is the accounting side of things, we can also utilize that information to help us in the field as well. Right? So tying that information, those pieces together from estimate to the field, and have that information flow to accounting will help out overall in looking at the productivity of the job. Now, I'm not going to jump into the back end here. I'm actually going to jump in right into my demonstration estimate you see at the top of the list here right now. And when I open this up, we do land on the home screen for this estimate itself. Some of this information has already been filled out during our estimating process when we started putting the bid together. But some of these pieces as well, we can send across to our operational suite. Right? One of the key pieces that we have in here, as you see, is a job number. That's required for us to push information across. This, again, typically comes from our accounting side of things. So we'll fill that field in once we have been awarded the job and have set this up within accounting. But we can also push information like the title of the job over to our operational side, some statuses that go along with it. We could even send information across regarding a project manager who's going to be running the job, as well as customer information along the way. All, again, a starting point of when we tie the estimate to the field right from the software here. But from our estimate information tab, we first land, I'm going to jump into the item listing tab itself. And when we look at the item listing in this estimate itself, we have 10 items in here that I've set up all across some different scopes of work in the civil scope with the quantities associated with them. But it is over here on the right-hand side where you see I have made columns available regarding job cost ID and the description associated with it. Now again, job cost ID with an estimate is really a generic place we can put these IDs, again, from a starting point that may be linked to our accounting software and what we use on the ERP side of things. And this is what helps us get that budget out and create that on that side of the world. But for us within Estimate as well, we can utilize this information not only at an item level to send information to the operations side, but if I do come down in here to the Estimate Detail tab, and I pick on any one of these items in my list of pay items here, I can also essentially code at any level, as we see over here on the right-hand side, in that job cost ID field within the structure of the item itself. Whether it's a crew, the material, which you see coded here, or even more tasks within the items themselves, the coding can be housed within here. And again, depending on how we want to get this out of the software, will depend on how we're using that detail on the operations side of things. Now, once I've actually gone through and coded the job, whether it's at the item level or down within the items themselves, it's a matter of getting or exporting the information out. Now, for those that do use the software currently, sometimes you may use exports right out of Estimate to start populating Estimate detailed information into our accounting software. And as you see here, I do have a number of different pieces or ERP systems that are able to integrate with and get that flat file out that they're then able to import into that piece. I can also take information out of here and Estimate detail wise and integrate it with scheduling tools such as Microsoft Project and Primavera P6. And this will give me that fully cost-loaded, resource-loaded file that I can utilize on the management of my schedule throughout the construction life in the field. But from within Estimate itself, we've actually built in the back end of things a very robust export functionality that sends this information over to our operational suite without having to do any file imports on the other end of things. And this export actually lives within our options area. And when I do select options, I'm going to go into the tools options area. And these are more global settings overall within Estimate, but keep in mind if you are using software currently and you don't have access to the tools area, not every estimator is set up to be able to manage the back end or the tools itself. Right? But when we do jump in here, we will notice that down here, export settings, I'm now actually looking at that B2W operational suite export tool and all the different options that I have to be able to send information across for us to use in the field. Now, as I scroll through here, you see there are a number of different pieces that we could set up and send across. We're not going to touch on all these today. Obviously, that would take probably a lot more time than what we have here this afternoon. But I'm going to focus on a couple things to help us look at the detail we can provide the field and how they can find that useful on an ongoing basis. First thing we're going to look at here is our tracking account description. And as you see here, right now, this is set up to the operational suite account description. I do have a couple of options here, not only the operational suite, but then the estimate cost component description as well. But for us to start here, we are going to use the operational suite account description. And what that is when we go through an implementation process of setting up our operational suite with you as a client, we can set up these tracking accounts on that side of the software and give them the description so that every time we do push information from estimate to the ops, we're using consistent naming or descriptions associated with those accounts in our jobs. Next on the list here is the group by functionality. And again, right now we're looking at grouping by an account ID. And when I say group by, we are talking about how we're going to look at those items that we coded within the job and group them on the tracking side of things or the job side of things when we send this information over. So in this case here, when I'm looking at account ID, everywhere where we have the same account ID on those items within my estimate, it's going to group them together and send those over to the operational suite for me and roll up or combine quantities along the way. But you do notice I do have a number of different options in here. And we will come back and have a look at one of these, which gives us the most granular level of detail based on the item ID, the account ID, and the description to send this across to the operational suite side of things. But once I have these in place, if I scroll down a little bit further here, again, it's all about getting information over to the field. And as you see, I could have up to 5 different reports that I automatically push across to the field on the operations side of things for them to utilize as well. Anything from a cost report, a material summary, even a work order, which is more of a field-facing report, we'll send this automatically over every time we do push a job across from estimate. and they will again be able to utilize, review those, access them as they need through the life cycle of the job itself. Now, once I've actually set these options up here, right at the top of my screen here, you have one button here that allows me to send information over to the operational suite. And when I do push that, the software is now going to go through the process of looking at all the details in the back end, all the information the way I compiled it and the options associated with that, and let me know if there's anything I need to have a look at, or give me notification that the export was completed successfully. So now that I've sent this information over to the operational suite, I can actually move away from estimate and open up that operational suite to have a look at what this job looks like on that end of things. So on my home screen here now, you do see I do have the home page for our operational suite. This is opened up in a browser on my workstation, so nothing required to be loaded on my laptop or desktop, only to point my browser to the server URL to have access to the operational suite. Again, we also house the 3 different elements in here: schedule, track, and maintain, depending on what we deploy to the field. But again, for us right now today, we're going to focus on the track area, which is that field tracking analysis. And from pushing to estimate, that job information that comes over is going to actually reside within my jobs area, which is a dedicated location for all that information as it comes across. Just by selecting jobs, again, I get a list now of all the active jobs in my database. Right at the top of the list is that webinar demonstration estimate. And just by selecting either the job title or the job number, I can actually look into the details as we push it across. I do land on the general information tab. And again, high-level details regarding job number, the title of the estimate, the customer has come across, even that project manager as we set it up with an estimate. And as I scroll down here, you can see I have rate class information. I also have those 4 different reports that I push across as well. So again, when we're logged in on the website of things, just by selecting any one of these, we're going to have that PDF open up for us to review and get an idea of how we built the job and expectations to perform in the field against. At the top of the screen here again, there is some other information that I can push across right from estimate. If I do have material that I want to send across, you see I do have that material list based on what's been populated within the estimate, now on my job side of things. I also have information from the subcontractor and the vendor perspective as well. So if we're going to evolve in terms of what we're going to capture in the field, pushing this information across on this estimate allows me to look at that information, look at the cost that comes across with it, and get a bigger, broader picture of what's going on a day-to-day basis. But realistically, when we push this job across, it's about the distinction between the estimate items, and in this case here, again, you see that I still have those 10 pay items that I've been asked to price out on this job, and they have the quantities that came along with them. But working in the civil world, we know that sometimes the way you bid the job is not necessarily the way you want to track it in the field. So we've separated out our estimate items from our tracking accounts. And when I come into my tracking account area, while I did have 10 pay items to start with, I've consolidated or combined those pay items into like scopes of work on the push from estimate to ops. And now I have only these 7 tracking accounts that my field has to work with. So again, from a starting point, we may want to make it easier for my guys in the field to give me valuable, useful information back on a daily basis, and not bombarding them with a bunch of codes here, broken out in a lot of different detail. Makes it easier for them to give me useful information. And again, information associated with rolled up quantities across those scopes of work. And as I get the details back in on a daily basis, I can compare my estimated costs that came across against my reported costs and have decisions associated with that. Now again, this is a very high level approach, a little bit more simplified in terms of sending information from estimate to track or the operations side. I'm going to come back to the general information section of the job. I'm going to get rid of it here right now, just blow it up, get it out of the way. And I'm going to jump back to estimate here for a second, because while that was a more simple high level approach, again, with our push from estimate to operations, sometimes we want to track in a little bit more detail in the field. So I'm going to come back to my tools options area, and I'm going to come back to my export settings. And again, just by looking at the two pieces here, the account description and grouping by, I'm going to change these options here now to carry an estimate cost component description over to the operational side of things, which means that cost component from estimate is now going to be what's describing my tracking account and the job setup. And rather than combining like accounts, I'm going to go now down to that granular level of detail, where if we have item IDs, account IDs, and descriptions the same on any of these items, that's the only time they're going to group them together. Otherwise, we're going to break everything out and see how that is presented for the field to use going forward. So once I change those two options, again, now it's just a matter of coming back, selecting sending to our operational suite, walking again through our wizard, the software once again, adjust based on my export setting, goes through making sure everything is okay on that end. And again, once we complete the exporting, the software itself will give us that export completed successfully information, and we can jump back and look at that on the ops side. So there we go, we've completed successfully. I'm now once again going to leave estimate, come back over into my operational side of things, and just by refreshing my jobs area here, again, at the top of my list is that webinar demonstration estimate, and jumping into the detail, while we go straight to the estimate items area, again, only 10 pay items that we had within this job with quantities. I now can come over to the tracking account area, and that's where we see, rather than having the 7 tracking accounts, I've expanded this out into 12 different tracking accounts for my guys in the field to now track again. As you see here, those tracking IDs are associated with the item numbers as part of that list. And I've also carried that description over from estimate as well. So again, making it easier for the guys in the field to know what the scope of work is as they add this to their field log and report on a daily basis. My quantities have now been separated out, not rolled up. So I'm confirming that on this kind of thing. And again, my unit cost is comparable to the items and tracking accounts as we push it across. And again, once we start reporting in the field, we'll see that reported unit cost populate in here as well. So now that I push that over to the field, right, for them to start using, it's a matter of getting information back on a daily basis and seeing how we do that. So while I go back to my general information section of this job itself, I'm actually going to bring in a third-party piece of software that allows me to display my tablet screen on the monitor here. And when I drag that in here, you're going to see now on your end my tablet and the mobile app that I'm going to utilize in the field to send information back on a daily basis. So up there in the upper left-hand corner, you do see I have the B2W mobile app. This mobile app is available on all Android and iOS tablets, and this is how we interact on a daily basis, typically from the field side of things. With this app, we built in technology to work in a disconnected mode, and what that means is if I'm working on a job site in remote locations where I don't have internet connectivity, cellular signal, anything along those lines, or if I don't have a tablet that has that LTE capability built in, just by syncing this app up to my server when I do have internet connection in the morning, maybe before I leave the shop, and getting back at the end of the day, any information I put in here throughout the day, I would then be able to sync up and the office would be able to view it going forward. I also, with the mobile app, am not required to assign individual devices or tablets to the users if I don't want to. If I have a shared pool of tablets, and every time the foreman or the supervisor leaves the office, they just want to grab one of those out of that shared pool. When they come over to the sign-in option here, again, just by tapping on the name in the list, we now see users that have been given access in my database to access the information through the mobile app. All they'd have to do is find their name, select it, and then enter in their PIN number to be able to have access and perform their daily functionality on the tablet itself. Now, once they do log into the mobile app, again, on the screen here, you see a list of field logs. These may be field logs that I have submitted across the jobs that I'm working on. They may be field logs that have come in from other foremen or supervisors as well. This is all dictated by the security setup on the back end of things in terms of what I can see. And it also may be part of my process if I have a supervisor that needs to review and approve field logs along the way as well. I could complete that full functionality right here on the tablet without even having to go back to the office. Now again, typically as the field utilizes this, it's about creating the daily field logs and then sending that information back. And as you see up in the upper right-hand corner, we have the option here for the new field log. And when I do tap on that field, we get 3 different pieces or 3 different ways we're able to create those on our mobile app. Right at the top of the list is that blank field log. That means as a foreman or supervisor, I'm going to go through the steps of adding all the jobs, the product production accounts, my employees and my equipment that I'm working with, and any other information I want to capture on a daily basis every time I start with the blank log. Underneath that, we have the ability to create from schedule. And again, schedule is another piece that we house on the operational suite. If we're using that to create assignments for our crews, we have the ability to copy that information over from schedule and populate job information, production account information, my employees, my equipment that I'm working with, and even some material information as well to make it easier for me to then just input quantities and submit it back. At the bottom of the list here, you see I do have the copy last field log option as well. And typically this is one of the most popular options that the guys in the field use, because if we are working on jobs with longer durations, or if we work with the same crews consistently, copying that information from one field log to the next, again, makes it more easy and efficient for me to just send the quantities into the field without having to recreate it every single time. So if I do select copy from the last field log, we walk through a little bit of a copy wizard here. I again get to select which pieces of information I do want to copy over. In this case here right now, I'm only going to copy the employees and the equipment. I'm going to add that job information as we pushed it over from estimate. But just by hitting create up in the upper right-hand corner there, now again, the mobile app is going through its process to create my field log for me. And when it's complete, as you see here now, I come into all the different areas I'm able to report on a daily basis and start filling out my activities and the information to send back. Now over on the left-hand side, you do see I do have a number of different areas there. General information section, which we're looking at right now. A grid view right underneath that, which we're going to come to in a second. But I also have some different elements along the way, such as a summary perspective. And this summarizes information on the field log before I send it back, or allows me to view at a field level. I have the attachments area, which allows me in the field to attach photos of what's going on in the day, provide a little bit more detail. I have my jobs information, those production accounts associated with the jobs. And again, the employees' equipment that I'm going to be reporting hours for on a daily basis as well. One thing I want to show is that while I'm looking at this level of detail here starting out, if you continue to use the software, evolve in terms of the information you want to capture from the field, we allow you as a customer to control those various pieces of information. And in the back end of things, managed within the business unit settings, we can actually expand on a number of different options in here to allow you to submit more information going forward. As you see here, when I did change to a different business unit, now over on the left-hand side, I've actually unlocked or opened up a few different areas on the field log as well. We could potentially capture some information regarding the estimate items, right? So quantities from a revenue generating perspective on our field log. We could also capture information regarding those materials and the trucking and even the subcontractors that we've pushed across with the job. Again, flexibility on your end of things as you continue to use the software to get more information, useful information from the field coming back, and be able to review that in the job on a daily basis. But not only those different areas that you have available to you, if I do come back to my shortened settings here, over to the right of each area here, within the general information section itself, we have what we call custom properties you're able to create and customize almost any area on the field log to add detailed information you want to receive from the guys going forward as well. So while some of this is pre-populated, as you see here, such as the work start and stop time, the foreman associated with the field log, down below here and underneath the business unit, I have 3 custom properties that I created and added to the field log myself. Some of these may be associated with weather, some of them may be safety topics, some may be regarding any delays or troubles they've had on site. Again, anything you may capture right now as part of your paper process, you would be able to create those individual custom properties, add them to almost any section as you saw over here on the left-hand side, and again, get that valuable feedback going forward on a day-to-day basis. But also these sections can be entered in a number of different ways. If we have a text box in here, we could start typing text into the field. Another functionality as well is if my tablet does have internet connectivity, I could use the speech-to-text functionality just by tapping on the little microphone next to my spacebar there. And when I do tap on that, hot and sunny day in the field will be automatically transcribed for me into any text box that I have in here with that functionality enabled. We could also have checkboxes as part of a custom field. And again, whatever information you're looking to capture, we can add right here in the general information or almost any other section throughout. That's just part of the flexibility we have to customize the field log itself. Right now, we want to jump back into actually looking how we get data from the field back to the office. And if I come down to my grid view here, again, while I don't have any information showing here yet, even though I've copied over, and you see this on the left-hand side, my employees and my equipment, now I need to add that job that I pushed over and the production counts that go along with it. So up in the upper right-hand corner, right below my menu button, I do have that add button there. Once I select that, you do see at the top of the list, we have our jobs and our production accounts that we're now able to add to this field log. And when I do select jobs here, right at the top of the list is that demonstration estimate. But you also see I have all the other active jobs as well. So on a field log, you could have multiple jobs in here with multiple tracking accounts and capture that information in the field in one place. Or you could do it individually just by tapping on the job itself and adding that to our field log. But you also see I still have options over to the left-hand side as well. I can come to the area right underneath my jobs icon here with the pylon. And this is actually my production accounts or tracking accounts that I've created in this job. And when I do select that there, now you actually do see that complete list of 12 different tracking accounts that my foreman in the field can select. And again, based on the level of detail we pushed across and the description that goes along with it, we're now tying our estimate to the field to make it easier for them to give me that detailed information back. And all they have to do is select any of the tracking accounts they want to add to the field log. And once the check mark's on there, it's done. And now we see our grid view is actually populated with their job information, those tracking accounts we've selected, as well as my employees and my equipment, and give me one spot I can start submitting time and quantities for them. So now that I have this on my field log, it's just a matter of my foreman coming in here and filling out the information for the day's work. You do see right underneath my tracking account, I have quantities associated with cubic yards and square yards. I can just tap on each one of those cells there, entered in the cubic yards that we had in terms of common excavation today, as well as the square yards that we did regarding fine grading, set each one of those quantities. And then down below for my labor and equipment, I can individually tap on any of these cells and have them highlighted to put hours in against them, or by the icon right next to my quantities there regarding representing a grid view, I could highlight everything at once, slide out my tool here to now apply hours across both my employees and my equipment. And just that quick and easy, I've completely filled out my field log and can send this back to the office. Normally, again, as a foreman here, it is that validate and submission option that we go through next. And we have some tools in the background to check the information and make sure everything's okay. But if I do change the orientation of my tablet here a little bit, I still have my areas down the left-hand side. At the bottom of that list is what we call a review section here. And when I select that, you now do see in one screen in front of you I have a summary of all the information I captured on the field log. I have my job information and the rate classes. We're going to start generating some costs on the reporting side of things. I have those production accounts and the quantities that we're reporting. I even see those estimated quantities as they came across when we pushed the job over here. And if I did have any field logs already submitted on this job, I would see reported quantities in here as well. And I get a breakdown of my employees and my equipment regarding the hours across these production accounts. Now again, on a field log perspective, this is one way to review the information. But again, we're trying to tie the estimate to the field to show how they perform productivity-wise and profitability-wise. And as I said before, right up underneath my grid view, if I just come back in the orientation I started out with, I have those different areas over here on the left-hand side, and right underneath the grid is what we call the summary view. And when I do select that, as you see here now to the right, I'm getting instant feedback as to how I performed today in the field. And this performance is compared to the estimated values of the job that we pushed over. So my hour breakdown here from a labor perspective gives me, based on the production accounts that I brought into this field log, where we estimated our labor and equipment hours to be. And right next to that, you see what I've actually reported. And my variance is 7.3 hours for labor or 2.5 hours for equipment shows me via that red graph that I'm actually behind productivity. Okay, so I'm not as profitable on this day as I was expected to be. And as a result, I could probably call a project manager or an operations supervisor and discuss this with them, how we need to change some things in the field or what my suggestions are to get back on track tomorrow. But as well down below that, if I'm an operations manager or project manager accessing this in the field, I do have cost information that I can share as well. Now, while we do know at a foreman level, you may not want to have them viewing this. We can turn this cost information off. But again, this is all based on the data that I've submitted on my field log, compiled hours across labor and equipment, and compared that back to the estimate side of things, again, to give me a graph and a view right here where red is not so good productivity-wise, and we'd rather be in the green area or green section as far as that goes. So that's on the field log itself, and that is instantaneous feedback that we get for our foremen or supervisors as they submit their daily field logs. What I'm going to do here now, though, is move away from the mobile app and the tablet, and I'm going to jump back to our operational suite and into the job itself, job information area. And rather than look at this demonstration estimate that we've created here, I'm going to come back to the jobs area itself and look at a different job that I have more information submitted on to see what that looks like over time. So from my job list here, I'm going to come back down to this Foxhill development job. And when I jump in here, again, we have those high-level details that I pushed over from estimate. But you do notice right at the top here, I have what we call a job dashboard. And when I expand this job dashboard, now you see that based on the field logs that have come in on a daily basis over the lifespan of this job, I'm starting to see some information regarding those tracking accounts that we've used on those field logs. I can get an idea of where I'm at, percent complete on the job, or where those tracking accounts may be. I can get information in terms of how far behind I am on certain accounts or how far ahead I am productivity-wise. I can see information regarding exceeding man hours across accounts as well as total man hours to date. But if I do scroll down here, right at the bottom of my screen, I have a number of different reports that I can run at a job level as well. And these reports look at different information compiled across those field logs. And they could look at cost detail. So if we're used to looking at WIP style reports, I can run any one of these and look at the information associated with those across all of my tracking accounts that you see here right now within the job. And up above, you see I do have some different ways to filter this information down. So if I did want to focus in on a certain date range or anything like that, and maybe it's work we've done this year, I could adjust this, just view that information on the report itself, and then look at information regarding estimates versus actual reported, see where I'm at in terms of a cost perspective within what's been sent back on a daily basis, right? Look at that across my major cost categories, whether it's labor, equipment, And if I'm tracking any materials, tracking or subcontracted on those reports, I even get the overall rolled up totals across each account. And on part of this report here, I can get the projected totals as well if I don't make any adjustments based on the information I'm receiving back from the field. Now, this is just one of the reports that summarizes that information that's coming in on a daily basis and looking at the cost side of things. If we think more of a productivity side of things, and we want to look at maybe those production account information, I have another report here that still looks like it has all those different tracking accounts within the job. But now, rather than looking at estimated quantities and costs against the reported quantities with it, I'm now actually comparing estimated hours to reported man hours, right? And as a result of this, I get further information regarding units per man hour or man hours per unit, depending on how you may want to look at that or read that information. I can see again how many days I may have been using or tracking in the field against this tracking or production account. I could look at overall information regarding units per day, my average crew size, or even the units per crew hour. Again, tying this information from a field level back to the information from an estimate side of things. If we did look at any reports from a cost detail perspective that we sent over to the job, we could then again compare estimate versus actual and have some discussions and make decisions based on that. I see a question came in here, and it is a question asking, can you access reports from the mobile app? But the answer to that is yes, we can access reports from the mobile app. It does require us to have internet connectivity on the tablet itself and access to the jobs from the mobile app directly out of there. And any of those reports can be run on that tablet. So back to the report here, again, looking at the productivity side of things. And again, while these are at the job level and all the reports we have available there, you may have noticed if I do come back here to my home page, I have a dashboard right here as well that looks across job information. So once this gets populated here, I can access information regarding jobs based on project manager, based on the status of the job. I can look at best performing or largest active jobs. And the great thing about this dashboard here is any one of these bars that I have on these charts is actually something that we call drillable. So we could drill down into this right from that chart and come right in again to that Foxhill development job. And again, looking at this job dashboard itself, I still have the capability here to drill down even deeper and look at those production accounts that are behind by anywhere from 16 to 25%. Right? So now I get in that level of detail based on the field log that is submitted, comparing quantities from original estimate to quantities to date, give me man-hour information, give me difference, and again, the percentage that I'm either over or under, depending on which report I'm running here. Now again, this is within the operational suite, whether it's in the job or right from the home page itself. But like I said, our goal here is to make sure we're looping this back from the estimate, right? So if I do come back in and leave the world of the operations side of things and pull estimates back up here, what we're gonna have a look at is, in doing so, I'm gonna come back through that Foxhill development job and I'm gonna actually look at the information right from the estimate itself, right? And what that's gonna tell me is, as an estimator, give me feedback based on the estimate and the scopes of work, and then be able to inform decisions going forward on future estimates or future jobs that may have like scopes of work as well. So as you see here now, I'm back on my estimate homepage. While I'm not going to go into the demonstration estimate, I do have that Foxhill development job as on my list here of one of the estimates I've worked on. I can open up this job with an estimate. And from here, I'm actually going to move over to the estimate detail tab. Again, I'm going to see a list of those estimate items within this job. I can highlight any one of these. And if I want to look at the common excavation, I see the breakdown of those tasks or those tracking accounts that I created on my operational side of things. And when I highlight that, even while I'm in estimate, I still see the breakdown from an estimated perspective with my unit cost that I sent over originally. But if I right click on the excavation item itself, And right at the bottom of my pop-up list, you see I have the ability to show job information, and that job information could be the general information section of my operational job on the ops side, or look at this individual tracking account itself. And if I do select the tracking account, right from estimate, I'm now actually in that Foxhole development job over on the operations side of things. I've navigated right to the tracking accounts area, right into the tracking account itself, and I can look at all the detail associated with that as I send it over from estimate and what I'm reporting to date, production rates associated with estimated values versus actual values. Again, we see that unit cost as we come over from estimate and what we're tracking at currently, even the man hours associated with that. And as I scroll down here, again, progress summary reports regarding this tracking account from a quantity perspective and a cost perspective, the man hours associated with it and the variances that are being reported based on those field logs that have come in. And I even get that projected cost at completion side of things only for this tracking account as well, if again, I don't make any adjustments in the field. So closing that loop there from estimate over to the operational side of things, again, allows me as an estimator to come over here and view the data as we report it daily, and it allows me to make those informed decisions on all the estimates I have going forward, wherever I may have like scopes of work as well. So that's what I wanted to show in the webinar, of connecting estimates to the field and how we can get that information from the field back into the jobs and ways we're able to view it. If there are any other questions here right now, please feel free to ask them. So we had a question come in. Does this functionality work if your estimate environment is in a separate load string environment from the B2W Track? The answer would be yes. Again, on our export settings there, as long as we set it up within estimate to point that information over to your track environment via the URL, you will get that functionality built in and be able to send information from estimate to the operational side of things. If you do or are looking for any more information regarding what we looked at here today, or want to get into a little bit more detailed demonstration regarding it, I put information on the screen to be able to contact our sales department. Or if you're a current user of the software and want to walk through any of the settings on the back end of things with an estimate, feel free to contact our support department. But other than that, I just want to thank you for taking the time with us here today to look at ways we can connect estimating to the field, and hope to see you again on a future webinar.